And we kick off this evening with a look at the cinema.
I'm not a complicated man. I like cinema.
It's beautiful, beautiful cinema.
Cinema history come to life.
I found my solace in the small cinema I went to every Thursday night.
I'm a professor of cinema.
I go to the cinema for the stories.
There was no competition between the cinema and seminar.
I mean, it's not within the realm of conventional cinema.
And now,
here's Pace and Johnson
with a cinema review.
It is Monday, February 19th, 7 EST, and thank you for joining me for another exciting episode of the Cinemasters Reviews. I'm your host, Payson the Cinemaster Johnson, and we have two exciting reviews tonight. We are going to be reviewing Madam Web, the new movie in the SPUM, that being the Sony Pictures universe of Marvel movies. I didn't know that was an acronym until a few weeks either. And we are also going to be reviewing the newest biopic by Ronaldo Marcus Green, Bob Marley, One Love. But joining me to review Madam Web, not Bob Marley, One Love, like I mistakenly said in the Facebook post, is the one, the only, the biggest, the biggest connoisseur I know of these Sony Picture Marvel movies, Jake Marangoni. Jake, how are you doing tonight?
I'm a little tired. Story of my life. No, I'm very happy that I get to be here so that we can discuss this. Yeah, I think it's pretty accurate that I am like someone who I am a historian about this bizarre franchise that we are seeing unfolding in real time.
Absolutely. I want to thank Jake. He is from Australia, waking up very early to join me for this review. He told me he wanted to, and I would not have wanted to review this movie with anyone else. So I say we jump right in. Madam Web, this is directed by S.J. Clarkson. This is the fourth movie in this universe. This is connected to the two Venom movies, Morbius. Now we have Madam Web. This sees Dakota Johnson as the character of Cassandra Webb. Her mother, well, to utter a meme, she died while researching spiders in the Amazon while she was pregnant. The character of Cassandra grew up in a foster home. She ended up becoming a paramedic for New York, and we see that she's now starting to she gains the ability to see visions, and she realizes that all these people that live in her apartment building might be connected, and wouldn't you know it, there is a villain that is trying to kill them. And Cassie decides to make it her mission to protect these girls. Jake, before I ask, I'm not going to ask you your knowledge on the character of Madam Web, but I just want to say, what is your history with both the two Venom movies and Morbius for folks that might not know at home?
I don't even know how it really started with me, but I just knew they were making the Venom film and been making it for a couple of years. And Tom Hardy had been announced to play Eddie Brock, and I was like, okay, interesting choice. And then as we started seeing trailers, things started to get a little weird. We knew there was going to have no connection to Spider-Man. It all started with just the idea of that Sony are so desperate to make their own superhero franchise with all these Spider-Man characters that they forgot the one thing, and that was the character of Spider-Man with this franchise. And because they have so many villain characters, they decide they're just going to sort of try a different approach with their cinematic universe by making it villain-centric, which is how we got the two Venom films to begin with. I remember watching the first one in cinemas with friends, and I wanted a good time. So I snuck in a bottle of Smirnoff, and I was just pouring it into my Coke. And as I was drinking it and laughing throughout a lot of the movie, and I just remember it just being a really fun time. And I was just watching, and also it's just a crowded cinema. We got to see the Spider-Verse tease. I remember that being super, super fun. And then as we started getting more news about this franchise, and the first one made so much fucking money, it then led to a sequel, which got postponed because of the pandemic. Another superhero movie. I don't know what to fucking call that. With Morbius. And that became the worst thing of all time. And then 2 years later, we get this one, which may be also the worst thing of all time. But my whole love of this franchise is just the fact that Sony is still desperate to try and create something to compete with Marvel, especially since now the fatigue is sort of starting to hit with general audiences. And I really just love to see how where this franchise is still going to go. We still have a Kraven movie coming out this year and a Venom 3, so I'm still thinking that 2024 is the year of the SSU.
Yeah, Sony has always been a company that has always like reeked of desperation, of desperately wanting to catch up. I think of seeing the Amazing Spider-Man 2, and it was just so obvious how badly they wanted to compete with Marvel. They're just shoving every single thing. Like, for my money, Amazing Spider-Man 2 is still probably the worst Spider-Man movie, and maybe the only Spider-Man.
Tell that to Caleb Goher.
Well, no, I'll tell that to his face. It's the only Spider-Man movie I genuinely don't like. Like, I can find positives in every other one, even Spider-Man 3. Amazing Spider-Man 2, just no. But, like,
and they were still trying to, and they're still, like, to this day, trying to do the whole Sinister Six. I don't know if it's Avi Arad or Amy Pascal, but Sony loves the idea of the Sinister Six, and yet they try to do their own spin-off, own version of it, and we get that stupid post-credit scene of Morbius with Vulture. Must be here because of Spider-Man, but yeah, it just reeks of desperation, and it's funny because it's not like Spider-Man doesn't make a lot of money, like it's always has, probably always will. They still try to do shit like this. It's just like no one wants to watch a Morbius film.
They have found such treasure in their animated films that I kind of wish they would just keep doing that, because when they made the Venom movie, Venom was a movie that, like, I'm not as big a fan of you, but I understand the appeal, and they somehow struck gold with that. Like, that movie was way more successful than I think even they could have imagined. Venom: Let There Be Carnage, although I don't think it's a good movie, I have a lot of fun while watching that movie. Like, I think that is the quintessential, like, turn your brain off superhero movie of the 2020s. And Morbius, yeah.
I was just sorry, didn't mean to cut you off. I was just going to say, when I think of people say, oh, these are like these, especially with Madam Web, which I guess we'll get into, people are saying that these are just like movies that felt like they came from 2003. Like, I feel like that's the one thing I hear from Madam Web and to a certain degree Morbius. But I feel like that is very accurate for the two Venom films. Like, to me, that is what I think about when I think of the early 2000s Marvel films, like Daredevil and Hulk and Blade, like those type of just weird oddities before they sort of figured out with Spider-Man and X-Men sort of how the structure of what a superhero movie could be. These are just like, we're just going to try just whatever. Like, we're going to be goofy and just out there and be weird. And that's sort of why I like those movies. And then Morbius and Madam Web are just like, they don't attempt anything.
That's my issue. Like, I think regardless of what you think about those Venom movies, they are weird and they're definitely like their own thing. And I think the issue with Morbius and especially Madam Web is this movie has like zero identity. This movie has like no sense of like a sense of itself. Like, it's set in 2003 for no reason at all, just to be an origin story for the Madam Web character, so you can have someone in their 30s, because the Madam Web character is usually an older woman, and I'm just like, like, if I like, this might sound rude, who cares about an origin for Madam Web? Like, it's really a movie that does not need to exist, and this movie by the end gives me no reason for it. I think the tone of this, the whole like campy nature of these Sony Marvel movies has completely run dry for me with this film, because I just don't think this movie had any idea what it wanted to be. What is your opinion? Like, does this movie have an identity to you? Like, did the campy tone kind of work? What do you think?
See, I never found any campiness. Well, I found unintentional hilarity from this movie, far and few between. But it definitely feels like the thing with the 2003 setting. The only reason I can come up with why it's set then, and I don't want to spoil, but there is a character, there's a thing that is that they're setting up, or they have to set up just so people know, and that will make sense and further down the timeline. Is the only thing I can think of. But also, I was expecting more of that, like 2003 pop culture. We're just gonna reference everything. They do it like once or twice with Britney Spears, Toxic. But yeah, like it's just even from like a filmmaking standpoint. I think the first first Venom movie like is at least competently made. Like, I'm not gonna say Ruben Fleischer is like a brilliant artiste, like he knows he's competent enough to know where to put a camera, even in the action scenes. I think he does a fine job. Andy Serkis, a little bit less down the track, but I think he does a decent enough job, and he also knows what to focus on better, I guess. What he knows what he's doing based on like I think visual effects wise, he's also good with that. But then I don't really care for Daniel Espinosa with Morbius. I don't think he does a lot of things interesting with that. I think a couple random stuff, but I just don't get any sense of like passion or motivation with what S.J. Clarkson's doing. I feel like there's a couple of like, what if we have the camera just spin like 180, or we just have some crazy camera movements going on? And I think outside of that, I just don't feel like she has a specific idea of how to tell the story.
Yeah, let's tackle the filmmaking of this movie, because I think while watching this movie, the filmmaking felt super like amateurish in a way. Like, not only is all the action filmed in like the shaky cam and like the weird like slow-mo that you would see in like a bad action movie, but just the editing is so choppy, and like you'll have scenes of like characters like researching, and you'll just have like zoom-ins for like certain things, and like it feels like something like it's trying to emulate something from the early 2000s, but it comes off so tacky and it comes off so like unprofessional that like it feels like I'm watching a debut film, and that's not what you want in like this huge blockbuster like that. Like, there are scenes where characters are talking and like the back, like things will be like out of focus that they shouldn't have been. And just while watching this movie, I was just like, did S.J. Clarkson have like a consulting crew with this movie? Like, was it just made by a company? Like, I was just dumbfounded while watching. Like, it's rare you get like a misfire to this level come out in theaters nowadays, and I'm just like, my mind was boggled while watching this film.
Yeah, 100% agree. Trying to think if there's anything specific with the I didn't like. Yeah, I think one thing you're talking about is just like what this movie is like. What is this movie about, or does this like have any sort of like idea or message? It doesn't, and that's the same thing with Morbius. It's less interested in telling like just a cohesive story that from beginning to end, and less of we have to set up 3 Spider Women. We have to make sure that Madam Web becomes Madam Web. We got to make sure that everyone knows that this is part of the Spider-Verse and that there's going to be other Spider adventures. But that doesn't really happen with this one at the end. Like, all it does is set up Madam Web and to a certain, not really, but the 3 Spider Women. Obviously, no spoilers, but it's not really their origin story. It's not them. Then I thought they were going to be. And this is one thing we have to talk about is fucking Sony and their marketing and their trailers, and it's very deceptive because they did the same shit with Morbius. But just stuff being in the movie that isn't in the movie, and also a greater emphasis on minor stuff that you think is going to be part of the movie, and then it's not at all. It's very sneaky and deceptive, and that's the one thing I really, really don't like about Sony, is that they tried too hard to market these movies as something that's not. Which I guess if you have this movie, Madam Web, how do you fucking market it?
What do you do? Like, without getting too much into this movie, we are teased with the idea that all 3 of these girls are going to one day become superheroes. Like, they're going to gain powers and they're going to become dangerous. And by the end, nowhere near are we at that point, because the movie wants to make a sequel, which, judging by the box office, we're not going to be getting a Madam Web 2 if I were to put any bets on it. Like, I just found that ridiculous. Yeah, speaking of, like, if just move on to another subject, like, I don't think any member of this cast was checked in or had any belief that this movie was going to be good at all, because everyone seems like they are giving like the minimum amount of effort that they can in order to get through all the scenes. Like Dakota Johnson, she is a great actress. Like, she can be good, but she is so bland in this role, saying every line in like in like a minuscule tone. Adam Scott seems like he's reading every line the first time, like from this, like every single line he's doing seems like a first reading, and probably this cast like whole probably like the low point even for this cast. The actor that plays the villain, I didn't write down his name, but the person that plays Ezekiel Sims,
Tahar Rahim.
Yeah, Tahar Rahim. It seems like every line he is saying was 80 yard, and like
very noticeable.
Is not like matched up to his mouth. It's super noticeable. Every line he has just feels like it's like delivered like just exposition of like, I need to kill these 3 girls. They are going to kill me in the future. I keep having dreams. Like, he has this weird relationship with this with his woman on the chair, and we never really get, like, why they're so loyal. And I kept thinking we were gonna get a scene of like why their bond seems like so strong, but we never get that. Like,
it's so weird, that character, and just that decision to do that again. I found that really funny, and also we don't even know what the hell happens to her at the end. Spoiler.
No.
It's just like she's just completely forgotten about.
Yeah, she's been helping the main villain this whole time. The villain is finally defeated, and then it's like, well, what is this woman gonna go out to? Like, my guess is she might be like the main villain in what could have been the sequel to this movie, but we're probably not gonna get this now. So
my guess is that there's 2 deleted scenes, or maybe 1 deleted scene where they just like have an argument and then he kills her. There has to be. They must have done something, and they just decided to just cut it out of the film.
Yeah, but what were your thoughts on the cast as a whole?
I'm trying to think if there's anyone that I liked in the movie. I don't think I do like Dakota Johnson when she's good. I think after watching her in Suspiria, like that really changed. I mean, I've got the post here. Yeah, it really changed my sort of perspective on her, because I just saw her as like another. At the time, Kristen Stewart, sort of just the YA, or the 50 Shades movies. No one was going to do well with that, and I sort of have the same feeling I have with Jamie Dornan after watching like Belfast and Barb and Star, where I'm just like, oh yeah, you actually could be a great actor, and I think it's just the source material, whatever you've been given, does not help you at all. I like Dakota Johnson, and I think she's fucking fantastic in Suspiria. I can't think of really anything else that's made me go, oh yeah, she's really great. But and then like the other cast, Sydney Sweeney, I never watched Euphoria, so I never really got to see what she does there. I think she's really good in The White Lotus.
I would agree.
I recently just watched Anyone But You. I think she's good in that. Like, I'm just not a Sydney Sweeney like mega fan of like, oh my god. But like, I think she's not good in this movie. Her character she's the shy one, and that she is like self-conscious and like introverted, and I wear glasses, and she sounds like she's on like Valium for the whole movie or something. It's it's not great. I did not particularly like her performance. Isabella Merced I thought was fine, and Celeste O'Connor I thought was fine. Everyone else I could not really particularly be like, oh yeah, they had something. I can't say that about any of the other performances. Maybe Adam Scott, just because he's Adam Scott.
Yeah, Adam Scott's probably the most like likable guy, because I think it's just tough not to like him. I think maybe of all the performances, Celeste O'Connor was maybe the one who was giving like maybe a little bit more than every other person.
Kind of giving a performance you'd expect.
Yeah, I think maybe just because that character had a little bit more of an edge than all of the other teenage characters.
Right.
There's such a stupid scene in this movie where it's set in a diner and they're all dancing on the table to toss it. I'm like, what are we doing? And then we have to live through it again because Madam Web has to time travel back, and every time this she like has to time travel back, and it does that stupid like early 2000s effect of like whoop, and I'm like, this movie is ridiculous. Movie has such a weird take on humor. I'm not sure about you. I thought the movie was paced like horribly. Like, this movie's around 2 hours.
I was just about to say, it's quite boring.
Like, it seemed like the movie had 90 minutes worth of plot, that it's stretching over like 2 hours. Like, there's a part where just Madam Web, like, where Cassie leaves all of these 3 teenage girls just in the woods just to go do some research. Like, that's the best idea you can. Like, this movie is just dumbfounded with how dumb these characters are.
It doesn't have great pacing. That's one thing I like about. I think that's the best thing about Venom. Let There Be Carnage. That one is the shortest of the 4 films. It's like 90 minutes. It knows exactly what it needs to do. It doesn't need to have any like just bullshit.
No,
it's just like we're just. And I think that's one thing about what I don't understand about this one specifically being the longest. Like, I think Morbius is like 100 minutes. I think same with Venom. But this one almost treats itself like it wants to be a real movie. And I'm like, you're doing this with the character of Madam Web and you're trying to make your own franchise. There's just elements that just aren't going to work with this type of thing. But yeah, I definitely just found the pacing to be just a little... Nothing happens. And that's like a weird... That's just sort of my whole thing with this movie, is that very little is going on and nothing feels... earned or engaging. I sort of knew it wasn't going to be your straightforward superhero with action scenes, but that was one thing I was sort of. I think it should have had. I don't know how you feel about that. It's the action scenes. I thought all weren't.
Yeah,
I think they were nothing.
Yeah, like I think the action scenes were all extremely underwhelming, and like with how this movie sets it up, where like none of the main heroes are like fighters by any means, so most of the action scenes are just going to be them like running away from the main villain. I guess I should have like had some sort of feeling by it, but like at least towards like the ending, you would hope that like maybe at least Cassie like gains some sort of combat feat, or maybe all the like the fact that all three of these like teenage characters are teased as being Spider Women, maybe one of them might eventually gain their powers.
Well,
like
in the third act, they become the Spider Women. That's that's the thing I was thinking about, is that, and I think it's a good pitch. I kind of like this the basic elevator premise, like elevator pitch. Is what if the Terminator but superhero movies?
Yeah,
like, I think that works well. And it's a guy who realizes he's going to be killed by this woman, and he's going to go back in time. Like, you can do this whole thing, self-fulfilling prophecy. It forces them to become the Spider Women. Like, there's just ideas you could go with that, and it doesn't do anything. It's just, I have to kill Ennis. I'm gonna have sex with this woman, and then she works at the NSA, and then I can hack into the NSA, and then I'm going to find these women who I know are in New York, and I can also tell you what they look like, and then you can visualize them, and then it's probably 10 years in the future, so let's age them back 10 years, and then, oh my god, it looks exactly like Sydney Sweeney, Celeste O'Connor, Isabella Merced. That was a part that I thought was really funny.
So dumb. It's the same thing that people make fun of in the Jason Bourne movies, where it's like, is that Jason Bourne? Enhance. Yeah.
It's great. There's I'm trying to think of this one. Yeah, there's before I go on to the next topic, I was just gonna say the action, I just was like, that's one thing I at least enjoy from like the Venoms. It's like, even though it's just like CG monster mash, I enjoy Venom symbiote battle. It's fun. It's fun. It is what it is, and I like that. Morbius was like a little bit less on the action, but this one's just like no action. It's just running, and I think the Terminator thing. The thing that I don't know if S.J. Clarkson had ever even referenced that as a reference for her or influence, but they're fighting with guns in that one, and there's chases, so that like just creates tension and excitement. This one is just, we have to run. We crashed him in a car. Okay, let's run. All right. 20 minutes later, oh no, he's after us again. Okay, let's run. It's just, it doesn't have anything that makes it like fun to watch. And I think that's like a thing for like general audiences. You want something for people to be like, oh fuck yes. Which doesn't have.
One of the last major things I want to tackle on is one, I just want to say, like, the ending of this movie, like, talk about how Madame Web just completely defeats the main character with like a giant Deus Ex Machina. Like, she activates
a literal S.
Yes, like literal no way to like that like she has the ability to now transfer her powers over to these characters, and like, first off, that was stupid because like there was.
Well, I love that she like splits herself. I was like, finally something.
Yeah, finally something's happening, but like there was no explanation for how she could do that, like there was no setup. But the second thing I want to say is some of the worst product placement I think I've seen in a movie, recently, like Pepsi is set up so early on in the movie, and without one Dakota Johnson, like.
I'm Madam Web. I am trying to open a can.
Yeah, I'm taking this from Paulo Yama's Letterboxd review. I'm not sure if Dakota Johnson knows how to open up a can because, just like without talking about how the main villain is defeated, product placement is involved in that, and I was just like, are we really doing this? Like, how can you look at this and not laugh? Like, I don't find this movie as funny bad as some people did, but I did find that particular scene, like, that definitely got a laugh out of me. What did you think about the product placement in this movie, Jake?
Yeah, it was not great. There's the big bill when she goes back to her apartment. There's that one shot that really like emphasizes the Beyonce "Crazy in Love" poster, like just on the wall, and I was just like, okay, like yeah, is this to remind you that it's 2003, or so that Beyonce's like fucking big or whatever? Yeah, obviously the Britney Spears, that toxic stuff, but like the Pepsi is just like so bizarre, and it's like the old Pepsi cans, and it's like what you expect from the 2000s. So I was just like, okay, I get it, like Sony and Pepsi. But yeah, I'm sort of just like product placement, unless it's like the most obvious shit ever. Unless it takes actually no, unless it takes away from my enjoyment or like from my engagement with the film. Like I don't particularly like focus on it because I think Fincher is a really good filmmaker when it comes to product placement, and he understands sort of why you got to have that, but also he knows that that should not get in the way of the story, and that's not the case for Metal Boy.
The scene I will always come back to when it comes to bad product placement is in Transformers: Age of Extinction, when Mark Wahlberg crashes into the Bud Light truck. The driver comes out and says, "I hope you have insurance for that." And he says, "That's a spaceship. You think I got insurance for that?" He picks it up, drinks it with the label thing there, and literally goes, ah. Like that's probably like quintessential bad product placement. Less said about Michael Bay, the better, at least in terms of the Transformers movies.
Best product placement is Frito-Lay Game Night.
Oh yeah, Game Night is spectacular.
3 for 1. How could that be proper with Frito-Lay?
Before we head into final ratings, is there anything else you want to say about this movie, Jake?
I would like to talk about the pregnant baby shower scene.
Let's do that. Oh God.
So we should. I don't want to. Well, I'm obviously not going to go too much into spoilers, but Emma Roberts is in this movie, playing a semi-important character in the Spider-Man lore. And every time they reference not just the baby, but also her husband, I was just like, I know what you're doing. He's out in another country doing something. I know what you're saying. And that ties in with Adam Scott's character. There's a line I laughed at this line because it was so funny. But when they're in the medic and he's like, "What do you mean? You've never been shot in Queens?" And I had had a moment there, but it's really big in that baby shower scene. They're all around trying to guess the name of the new baby, that's Emma Roberts' baby, and I was like, okay, are we going to get the name?
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be revealed in that scene. I thought it was going to be like she does her Final Destination thing, and that's how she realized she comes up with the name.
Yeah.
No, nothing happens. It's just a bunch of women in a circle just guessing names. There's nothing to it other than a little bit of a Easter egg for the Marvel fans to be like, I know what you're doing, which then comes back later when she does give birth, but still we don't know what the name is. And I was just like, so what was the point other than just to have these minor characters? And they're like, is that supposed to get just regular people to watch these? Like, because they don't know Madam Web or Morbius? Like, is that what we're doing?
Maybe that's my guess. Like, oh man, we're going to be tying this into the character that you all care about that we, for some reason, are not going to show because we maybe can. I don't know. Yeah, we're
literally getting to the absolute origin of not the character, like being born. Yeah. And that is just like, I would have never expected that. And if that's what they're going to do later on, I've heard things about Venom 3 that I find very interesting. We'll see if that actually plays with this character. But yeah, it's so bizarre that they're in the 4th film, they're trying to do this now. And they're doing it with his literal birth.
Yeah. Very stupid thing to do, but wouldn't expect anything else because this movie is very, very stupid. I say we head right into final ratings, Jake. Ratings here at Cinemasters Reviews. We were rating movies on a scale of 0 to 10 videotapes. 0 is the absolute worst. 10 videotapes is the absolute best. Jake, on a scale of 0 to 10 videotapes, what would you give Madam Web?
I begrudgingly give it 1.5 videotapes. I was torn between 1.5, and 2. And also part of me was just like, is this worse than Morbius? And I think it is. And which is not a high bar. It's nothing to really say. I think they're both just as bad as each other, but I at least had a little bit more from Morbius. And I mean a little bit more. No, particularly did not like this movie. It might grow on me. We'll see. I'll see later down the track with when I get this on 4K. But as I've also just committed to this bit now of being like the biggest SSU fan and historian. So I 2 out of 2. We're now even playing field of good and bad SSU films, and now we're going to see what Craven and Venom 3 are up. So I'll be back. I'll be back for this too.
Yeah, you are definitely my pick to review both of the movies. If I were to rate this movie, I think I'm going to go a little higher, but not much. I think I'm going to give it 2 videotapes out of 10. I think this is a horrible movie. Yeah, I just don't think. It seems like it was directed by someone that didn't know how to make a movie. None of the cast members felt like they wanted to be in this film. It just reeks of desperation from Sony, and at the end of the day,
absolutely.
Yeah, it's one of the worst things you can say about a movie where afterwards I just said this movie has absolutely no reason to exist. I think in regards, I'm not sure whether I think it's better or worse than Morbius. I can definitely say I think Morbius is a more entertaining movie in terms of how just ridiculous Morbius can get. Like, there's no scene in this movie that is Matt Smith dancing. That is
That's the thing. That's also a good thing to mention is that I think I appreciate Morbius a little bit more now after watching this. I'm like, I thought Morbius was like the bottom of the barrel, the absolute worst thing that could possibly come from a superhero movie. Oh no, just wait 2 years and you'll meet Madam Web.
Yeah, but I would not recommend this movie at all. I don't see it in theaters, don't see it at home. Just this is one of those like avoid this superhero movie at all costs. But Jake, thank you so much for reviewing Madam Web. Before you head out, is there anything you would like to plug personally?
Letterboxd, you can find me there. I'm around multiplex. I've got this. Yeah, just around. I have a new job. Hell yeah, start next week.
Nice.
So that'll be awesome. But I'm around. You know me.
That's awesome. Yeah, thank you so much, Jake. It's always a pleasure to talk movies with you.
Thank you so much, Mason.
Yep. Thank you once again, Jake, for joining me. But we are going to be heading right into our second review of the night, that being Bob Marley, One Love. This is the newest biopic from Ronaldo Marcus Green. He was the one that directed King Richard back in 2021, earned Will Smith his Oscar. Regardless, like, insert slap joke all you want, but it did get Will Smith his Oscar. Very good movie. And he's back doing another movie on a historical figure, this time Bob Marley, played by Kingsley Ben-Adir. This movie's set in the mid-70s, and it takes place during a time where Jamaica is going through a lot of political unrest, and Bob Marley is preparing to organize a peace concert to promote peace in a peaceful protest way. And we get to see him with his wife, played by Lashana Lynch, essentially organize this concert and see if he can use his music to unify the people of Jamaica. This is a movie I wanted to I wanted to really like, but I think by the end, like, I think while watching this movie, I think I just figured out pretty early on, this is not going to be a biopic that really like goes beyond the typical biopic formula. This is going to be one that is just here to present a historical figure that the people know, that most people really love, such as Bob Marley, and is not going to really like dive into him as a person in that really like informative or artistic way. That's not saying that there's anything that is necessarily to not like about this movie. I think Kingsley Ben-Adir does a really good job of capturing the spirit of Bob Marley. Obviously, he's someone that played by a lesser actor could definitely go more into like impression, could definitely seem a little bit more like impersonation wise, that could really like make your eye roll as you're watching someone like try to capture this essence. Kingsley Ben-Adir does not do that. He does a really, really great job in the scenes where he's performing live on stage. You can see why people were this guy's music was so revolutionary, why so many people really got behind his spirit, why people got behind how he just had this love for the world. And I think Kingsley Ben-Adir is really, really great at that. The rest of the supporting cast does a really good job. I think Lashana Lynch particularly is really good as Bob Marley's wife, as Rita Marley. the movie kind of touches into the fact that Bob Marley had affairs with other women, and you can see that Rita Marley is someone that definitely, she definitely loved her husband, but obviously had the anger for that. And the movie doesn't really seem interested in diving into that, but like the few scenes we have of them arguing and them like having fights as to like where their career should be going, I think that was probably the most interesting stuff that the movie could have tackled. And I'm just not sure if the movie was that interested in tackling that at the end. Like, I think the weakest aspect of this movie is I didn't really, after the movie, learn anything new about Bob Marley. I think it just wanted to show this historical moment in time. It did the whole, like, it did the thing that to me that like makes my eyes roll during music biopics, where like there's a scene where a character goes to try to find redemption from Bob Marley, and wouldn't you know that the next scene is Bob Marley writing the song Redemption. Like, there are scenes of them like of all the characters just having fun, and you see and you hear the song jamming playing over that. Like, it's just a certain thing that just kind of makes you like make your eyes roll in these biopics. Like, I know a lot of people aren't the biggest fan of this genre. I personally like it when it's done really well, but I totally understand watching movies like this that just don't really leave you with anything to really like sink your teeth into why the genre can be such a boring one for people. Visually, I think the movie looks really good. Movie has a lot of like great shots of Jamaica or of London. We go through a lot of places in the world, and the movie definitely has a nice, really distinct visual look. I think one of the major issues with this movie is the movie is barely over an hour and a half, and I just don't think we had enough time to really learn anything about these characters, really learn anything about their personal struggles. And I think if the movie was more interested in learning more about why Bob Marley was so invested in bringing making people aware of this conflict in Jamaica, making people aware of his peace movements, I think the movie would have been a lot more interesting. Maybe don't have quite as much performance scenes as they do, maybe not have as much montages, which we know that Ronaldo Marcus Green can do, because King Richard, you have a ton of scenes where you have Richard Williams talking with his daughter, talking with his wife. You really feel like you understand the character of Richard Williams as a person. So we know that Ronaldo Marcus Green could do that. He just decides not to do this with this movie. Maybe it's just because he thought that people knew enough about Bob Marley, but I personally, and I'm sure many moviegoers, would have liked to learn something new about the person. If I were to review this movie on a scale of 0 to 10, I think I'm going to give it just a flat 5. Like, I think this is just your typical run-of-the-mill biopic. I don't think there's really anything to really remember after you watch the movie. Like, I think it has some solid performances, has good direction, but from a story perspective, there's really nothing that special here, and your life is not going to be any worse watching this movie, but it's not going to be any better watching this film. I think if you catch it on streaming, I don't think you're going to have a miserable time, but or even like a bad time at all. But this is not a movie that you have to rush out to see in theaters unless you just really, really love Bob Marley's music and want to see it on screen. But yeah, thank you all for watching today. Remember to like this video and subscribe to the video store. It really helps get our videos out. Next week, we are going to be reviewing Drive Away Dolls, the new movie by Ethan Coen, one of the Coen brothers. I'm a diehard Coen brothers fan, so I'm really excited to see what Ethan Coen does in his first movie without Joel, as well as Ordinary Angels, the new movie with Hilary Swank. Thank you all for joining me this week, and remember, as always, watch more movies.
And the award for most vapid film review of the century goes to...
Okay, movie review. Okay, I thought it was beauty.
And he's now in cinema hell, where one day we'll all be reunited.
This is me at the Regal Cinema crying as I did through much of the film.